welcome to Dave's Think Tank. So because of the coronavirus, I have not been out of the house in a month. And also for a bunch of different reasons for the 6 months prior to that. Suffice it to say, I've had more than the usual amount of time on my hands, so I've been considering a mystery. I've spoken about this in a previous video. You may recall this from 2 years ago. A while back, I was dumping some water out of my kettle when I heard a rattle inside. Almost immediately, this piece fell out of the kettle and into my sink. So obviously this piece became detached and I would have to figure out where it came from and put it back or else get a new kettle, and I wasn't going to do that. Except, now take a look inside here. There is nowhere in here that this piece belongs. It's not off the bottom or the sides. Now these two holes are a perfect match for the two metal ends of this coil on the bottom, except if the coil went through the holes, then there's no way that this could ever fall out. Maybe it's part of some internal mechanism in the handle here or something, but then how did it get out of there and into the kettle? And why has it worked perfectly for a couple of years now since the piece fell out? Yes, this one. He tasks me.
He tasks me.
I still haven't figured out where it comes from, but I have been pursuing some lines of investigation. 2 years ago I mentioned that it might have come from inside the handle, but there was no way for it to get from the handle into the kettle. I didn't mention it at the time, but there is a narrow slit that you can see here at the top of the handle. I didn't mention it because the slit is only 1 inch wide while the metal piece is 1.5 inches at its narrowest. But over these long, cold, and lonely winter months of isolation, I've begun to wonder, is there some way for a 1.5 inch metal piece to fit through a 1 inch hole? So I devised an experiment. What I have here is a button from my high school. And yes, my high school team was the Trojans. Grow up. Just remember, you made that joke, not me. Moving on, this button is 3 inches across, and here I have a piece of paper with a square hole cut through it, only 1.75 inches across. Now, obviously, a 3-inch button is not going to fit through a 1.75 inch hole. So what about the diagonal? If my high school math hasn't failed me, the diagonal is 1.75 root 2, which is about 2.5 inches. Still not big enough for the button to fit through. So I think we're all agreed there's no way for this button to fit through this hole. And yet, want to see that again? This isn't a camera trick. It's not sleight of hand. The button is actually going through a hole that is too small for it. So if it's possible for this button to fit through this hole, is it also possible for this metal piece to fit through the hole in the kettle? The answer to this is almost certainly no. They're completely different situations. The reason the button fits through the hole in the paper, it has a lot to do with these folds I've put in it. And you can't really fold a kettle, at least not in the dimensions readily available to us. But don't worry, Dave's Think Tank has only just begun to work on this mystery. I'm almost certainly going to be stuck here for several more months, and will keep you up to date on my progress.
He tasks me. He tasks me, and I shall have him. I'll chase him round the moons of Nibia and round the Antares maelstrom and round perdition's flames before I give him up.